welcome back to What's on My Needles, and this week we are continuing the turtle from last time, and we're making the turtle body out of this pretty yarn. So it's going to be starting at his effectively belly button if he was a mammal, and then working up around to the center back. So let me get set up and we will get started. Okay, so here's the yarn for the center. And what I'm going to do is do a magic loop cast on. So I'm making a loop in my yarn. I'm going to leave it over my fingers for a minute. Then reach a crochet hook in this case in and pick up the working yarn. And then pull up a loop and pull up one more. That locks that first one in place. Then same thing if I'm going to insert and pull up a loop and pull up another loop or pull through a loop. So I'm going to do that all the way around. I am doing this over the loop and the tail. So there are two strands of yarn there. That does give the center hole a little bit more structure. And it also makes it so that it's a bit easier to have or to draw it closed. 6, 7, 8, 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay. So again, we are going to separate this out into eventually 4 working needles. But for right now, I'm actually only going to be using 2. I just find 8 stitches way too small to be on 4 needles. Okay, so then I've got the tail hanging down. I'm just going to pull the rest of my needles down in frame. And unlike when I'm decreasing to a center point, I actually do the knit one round when I'm increasing. It just makes it a lot easier for me personally. Okay. Now I'm going to knit one. Then I'm going to do a lifted left increase. So I'm going into the stitch below it and pulling up that left hand leg and then knitting through. I'm going to do that again. Then I'm going to grab a new needle. So I'm going to do this around and around and around, increasing in 8s. So in this row, that means increasing every stitch, and then moving on, it's only going to be increasing 8 stitches every other round. And then I'm going to continue with that until I get out to the required number of stitches. I will be switching from the double points over to circular needles in a little bit. So when it becomes more convenient to be on circular needles, that's when I will move over. And I will be back to show you the next step. So here we are at I just finished the last increase round for the turtle's tummy. So now it's time to start working on the connection points for the tail and the feet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the yarn to the front. So I do this with what I call purl pads. So I'm going to go ahead and purl 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's going to get me my tail. 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's the space between the tail and the back paw. So what this does is it gives me connection points of where to pick up. And the paws and the tail are worked like this, but the head is not. And in fact, I won't be doing the spacing for the head right now. The head actually is in the next round. So the head is done by putting in waste yarn. So I'm just double checking that I've only done 2. It's done by putting in waste yarn to pull out later to pick up the stitches for the head. So I'm going to knit for quite a ways and then do the last 2 paws. I will hopefully come back in just a minute to show how the head is done. So here I am back around to where the neck is, and I'm going to switch over to a double pointed needle because I have to knit these stitches twice, and this way I don't have to put the stitches back on to the circular needles to get back to the beginning. So just like switching colors, except this time I've got the tail in the front rather than in the back. 3, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so that is where the neck is going to be. I pull both ends to the front, cutting off the yarn at both ends. And now I'm going to knit off of the double point back onto my right hand needle, and I will get back to how to work the head in a little bit. But suffice to say, these gray stitches will not be staying in place. They will be getting picked out later. And just so you guys can see, this is what this 2 rows of purls does. It means that I've got rows to pick up stitches a little bit later on to make his little paws. So I'm going to keep going around and around and around, doing the 6 decrease, so decreasing 6 times evenly per row or per round, and that will finish up the body. I will come back hopefully when it is time to work on some of the feet and maybe the tail, but so that will be next. So here we are with the tail and the first foot done. This is the back, this is the belly. So now it's time to do the next foot. Now because I'm working with ombre yarn, I am doing back, back, front, front, just so that it looks like the color is slowly gradating towards the head. So I'm going to hold it with the belly facing me. And I've mentioned this before, but here are the purl bumps that I'm going to pick up from. So there's ends, which are the upper parts, and there are U's, which are the lower parts. So I'm going into the ends. Nice tails to pick up later, or to weave in later, and drawing through a loop. Again, going through the next end and pick up all the way around. So it's 8 stitches on this side, and then it's going to be 8 stitches on the other. Now, picking up stitches on the second row is a bit harder. So again, it's what was the ends when it was right side up, but they look like U's from this direction. But I can't just pull through quite as easily because that other needle's in the way. So like I can do it, but it's way slower. But luckily this is the only quote hard part of the paws, unless you consider Kitchener stitch hard. So that's how I pick it up. And again, that is a pick up and knit, not just pick up stitches. So at this point I will go around and work on making the little paw. And then I'll make the other two. Then I'll be back. So I'm now at the point of adding the eyes for the turtle. I have put the body inside the shell. I did that before I started stuffing because I'm not sure if this giant Shelly is going to be able to crawl out of his shell, and in fact I don't think he will be able to. So all of that work on the inside is most likely never going to be seen, but that's okay. So here are the stitches for the top of Shelly's head. I'm going to count in, and that's the center, so that stitch is going to be right where the first eye goes. So there are a couple ways to add eyes and beads, buttons, that kind of thing to knitted objects. I like to do them as I go. So in this case, I've got a nice big, it's either leather or pleather covered button. I'm going to see if I can somehow get the stitch to go through, and it looks like I can. So the button actually just goes over the stitch. I'm going to feed the other stitches back on. I will fix them. Actually, I'll fix them right now. So the stitches did get pulled out a little bit as I was working that. So there's the first one. There's the almost there. There's the second one. We're going to back up to the button, and then we're going to knit through the loop that went through the button. That should loosen up the yarn enough where it's a bit easier to handle. 1, 2. Then do 1, 2, and 3, and again pull that loop through the button. So as we saw in the first one, it's a little tricky. Normally I do this with a crochet hook. Unfortunately, my supply bag is somewhere else today. So that's okay. So we've got the button on. Again, just knit back into that stitch again. Okay, so there we go. There are the eyes. So at this point, I'm just going to keep working down on the little guy. I am right here. So pretty soon I'm going to start decreasing 4 times per round all the way until I get to a cute little end, and then he will be all done. I do need to weave in some of the ends still. Again, that's normal for me at this point. And then I will be back to show you how Shelly came out. And here is the inside of Shelly. So I did try, and Shelly does get out of his shell. So what that means is to get him back in, I have to back him up. So tail and hind feet go in first, and then the front feet. So 1 paw, 2 paws, back paw, tail, and last paw. So there is Shelly all finished up. Shelly is going to go off to his new home soon. So I will see you next time on What's on My Needles. Bye!